first time I visited the Juan Carlos Center was as a visiting lecturer, because Estrella de Diego, she was 1999 chairperson. She was giving a lecture series, and she invited me to give one of the lectures on history of art. That was my first experience, no? And afterwards, when I was at Cervantes Institute as director, I had a very strong connection, as you know, with Juan Carlos Center. No, there was a very strong cooperation between both institutions, no, most of the time. So at the time I was invited to become catedrático, to occupy the chair, I had a very long previous experience of the center. As a lecturer, as a visitor, as someone very strongly connected to the Juan Carlos Center, as part of the Spanish-speaking cultural life in New York, no? So that was for me, when I was invited to that, that was a beautiful surprise, no? Because I love the center, and I love teaching in a sense, no? I decided I would like to teach about the experience, not teaching literature as such, but the concrete experience of writing and reading as a writer. No, this is something I have always loved to stress. No, in order to become a writer, you need obviously to write, but you also need to read, and you need to read a lot in a very special way. No, paying far more attention than usual, no? Than civilians pay. No? So that was my focus on this part of teaching. And then I also did something that I think I'm quite proud about. I thought that it would be nice to set up a lecture series about contemporary Spain, about democracy in Spain, because you know that NYU has the wonderful Abraham Lincoln Brigade Archive, no? So many of the activities, of the cultural activities of NYU related to Spain have to do, obviously, with the Civil War, the international brigades, and so on and so forth. No? But I wanted to stress the fact that after the war, after the defeat, we have this heroic narrative of war and defeat, but there is also an aftermath, which is democracy. After Franco's death, no? And I came out with this idea about the future, how in the 70s, in the early 70s, after Franco's death, many of us were trying to figure out what will be like the future, no? And so I thought, and I set up this lecture series inviting people who have played a part in bringing about democracy in Spain. So I set up this cooperation with the Fundación Pablo Iglesias, and they helped us to finance this lecture series because there was not that much money, no? So we had to hunt for sponsors, no? And I think it was great because there were people who have been working with the Constitution. Some of those who created the Spanish Constitution, I invited them to give the lecture. And I remember one of the sessions, there was, on the panel was one of the fathers of the Spanish Constitution, no? Who was Virgilio Zapatero, no? And I remember I said to the audience, no? When you think about the fathers of the American Constitution, you think of old men with wigs, and for us Spaniards, these are some of the fathers of the parents of our Constitution, no? So, and we had a number of panels, and you remember, we even invited Alfonso Guerra, who was the vice president of the government with Felipe González, and who was one of the main protagonists of the transition and anti-Francoism, no? So for me it was exciting to show this American New York audience the very people who had brought about democracy to my country. No? We had a full house every day, no? And there was an excitement in the audience, no? Because we tried to cover different grounds, no? The politics, and also the role of women, because something that was very important for me to stress was that one of the great changes in Spain with democracy was the eruption of women into public life, no? So there were a number of women, of important women, talking about what it was like to be a woman in Spain, and how things have changed so fast and for so much better, and in all these years, no. And I felt fulfilled in a sense, no, because this is something I have always been very much aware of. The fact that the history of Spain, contemporary history of Spain, sometimes is explained with so many wrong ideas. No, there are so many mistakes, so many false assumptions about Spain. No, so that it is important to clear them out. It is important to show the full picture, no, about contemporary Spain. No? This is something that, as a citizen, as a Spanish citizen, as someone who feels engaged, politically engaged with the democratic system in Spain, this is something I feel very much motivated about. No, how to explain the real history of my country, as opposed to these legends or false assumptions. No? And of course, we want to know the Civil War, everything. But this is not, there are many more stories about Spain, no? And there are many more faces of Spain that had to be shown, no? Because something I deeply dislike is this pigeonholing of Spain, no? As a country of darkness, and this idea can be sometimes flattering, but I don't like this kind of flattering neither, no, because this is the romantic idea about a country who is so different from anything else, no, who is colorful and bloody, and it's not so, as you perfectly know, no. Spain is a contemporary, absolutely normal democratic country, as full of errors and problems as any other democracy, but it's not some colorful picture from 19th century opera. No? And Spain is not Carmen. My training at the university was as a historian, no? Historian of art, but a historian. No? And I think we need to try to learn what really happened, no? And for a long time, the main history was the history of success, no? I mean, the success of the transition. And in many ways, this success is real. And every transition from dictatorship to democracy has prices to pay. This is very difficult to deal with because you have to try to do two things at the same time. And I think it was Tony Judd who said that, no? You need to set up, to figure out a model of democracy, of living together, and at the same time, you had to do some degree of justice, no? So how do you balance that, no? In France, for example, in Germany, after the war, was it possible in Germany to imprison all former Nazis? Was it easy in East Germany after the reunification, to punish each and every collaborator with the regime? So it was very difficult to bring about democracy in Spain. It was far more difficult than people can think with the benefit of hindsight. No, I was there. I was there. And I know how difficult it was. And how imperfect it was. But the fact is, and during the 80s and the 90s, a great deal of my own work as a writer and as you might call it, a public intellectual, even I don't know the term, no? I don't like the term, no? Was how much oblivion was built into our system. No? I was writing in the 80s and in the 90s, my novels, many of my novels had to do with memory, no? With how the memory of anti-fascism was being lost in Spain, how difficult it was, how little attention was being paid to what had happened before, no? To the people who had been fighting. So there was a kind of amnesia. No? In all this, there was a temptation of amnesia, especially in the 80s. And there was a reason for that. It is understandable, like in countries after the war, there is a need to rebuild. There is a need to concentrate on building the future. So it's only natural to partly neglect the past. But how do you keep the balance? No? For me, much more might have been done, could have been done, about reparations, about remembrance, about paying homage to people who have suffered. But as a whole, when you try to see the whole picture, I think that mostly, this is a story of success. This has been successful. At the time, the communists were mostly in jail. Many of them had been murdered after the war, no? But still being clandestine, being in jail, being tortured, the Communist Party had the generosity of proposing national reconciliation. This was the year I was born. In 1956, the Communist Party came up with this extraordinary and very strange idea of reconciliación nacional. And I think that it was more or less achieved in a sense, because nothing is perfect in public life, nothing is perfect in history. No? And knowing where we came from and where we arrived, I think that this system I think this is a success, as I told you before. And I'm absolutely critical, as you know, of many aspects of Spanish politics, of Spanish inequality, of the rule of law. There are so many flaws, so many terrible. There is corruption, there are so many things, no? But most of the problems we now have, most of these problems are full responsibility. It's nothing that we are no longer paying the price of the past, no? These are problems, these are very difficult problems, and it is our responsibility. At the end of the Second World War, the international democracies decided to respect Franco. In 1953, the United States got this agreement with Franco in order to get the bases, no? In 1959, Eisenhower, the president of the United States, came on an official visit to Madrid and publicly embraced General Franco. So it is not only our responsibility, no? We were part of the game of the Cold War. And at the time of the Cold War, it was useful for the United States and for many international countries to support Franco's dictatorship. So there were things that were absolutely impossible. It was impossible, and the Communist Party and the brightest people at the time were perfectly aware of that. No? It was impossible to bring about the Republic and to make justice to all those who have been prosecuted. It was impossible. Because there was the army, and the army was absolutely Francoist. I went into the army as a soldier, no? I was drafted into the army in 1979, late 1979, 1 year after the Constitution. In every barracks in Spain, there was Franco's portrait and Franco's testament. And 2 months after I was released from the army, Tejero's coup came about. So it was very difficult, very, very difficult. We might have suffered a coup along the lines of Argentina or Chile or Uruguay. And I remember the night of February 23rd, it was midnight, I was listening to the radio, and some information came from abroad. The American Secretary of State, I think it was General Haig at the time. It was during Reagan presidency, no? He declared publicly that they asked him about the attempt coup in Spain, said, this is an internal affair. So that was how much support we had, our democracy had. Students were from, as you know, mostly from all over Latin America and Spain, no? And they were young and they were passionate about. And what I tried to teach them was how to pay attention, how to connect your reading with your observation of actual things. I mean, how to be awake to books, to fiction, and also to be awake to reality. And especially how to read paying absolute attention to what you were reading, no? Line by line, sentence by sentence, no? And the effect, when this, the times it came successfully through, it was so ravishing because there were moments of a kind of collective enthusiasm, no? About a story by Borges or Cortázar or whatever, no? And it was beautiful, very beautiful. No? I did it, as you know, later on. I kept doing it from the Spanish department of the creative writing seminar, no, for 6 or 7 years, no, and every year it was I thought up a good reading list, no, and I tried to. There was something I said to them, you go down on the subway, no, since you love writing and reading, the moment you sit down on the subway train, you open your book. No, you start reading, and it's good. But be careful that when you are reading, you may not be paying attention to something important that might be inspiring to you. No, so you read, but at the same time you had to. No? And there were times that I had them. I proposed them to do some exercises of attention. No, sometimes I ask a student, for example, can you tell me what trees have you come across while you were walking from the subway to here to the classroom? What trees? No. So next time, try to pay attention to the trees that you see on your way, and to trying to find out the names of the trees. No, to pay attention to what is right in front of your nose. No, takes a lot of effort. No, and this is the greatest exercise that as a writer you can do, because your material, the material you have to work with is reality, experience, real experience, no? Filtered, of course, by reading and by techniques, but your treasure is yourself, is the world around you and inside you. My almost exclusive experience as a professor, as a teacher, has been with American students. First in Virginia, then at CUNY, and later on, and for so many years at New York University. That has been a transforming experience for me. During the confinement, I kept a diary. No? And day by day, I wrote I kept this journal, because I was obsessed by the idea that we need to pay attention, and that we need to keep the record straight about the things that happen to us. No, I remember during September 11th in New York. No, at the time, those days, my most important feeling was to keep track, to pay attention. No, to stay alert to everything that happened around me, because this kind of sensations, of feelings, of data that you are able to keep, to observe while you are there. No, I mean, being there at the moment, it is a kind of gold mine. No, because afterwards, no, there's such a great difference between those who really bore witness to what was happening at the time, and those who, through history or whatever, try to bring about what happens. No, this is the difference between the historian and the witness is absolute. No, of course the witness doesn't have the time perspective. No, and this can be an asset too, because not having the benefit of hindsight, you are really paying attention to what really happens. Your vision is not disturbed by future knowledge. No? You are there, and you are bearing witness to what happens there. No, that was what happened to me during the confinement. No, this need to pay attention, not to be a witness to my present time. No? Also, part of the book is written afterwards, during the new normalcy. And what happened to me, and it also went into the book, is that memory, long-time memory, came back very, very strongly to me. The present was almost empty. Nothing was happening to us in our daily lives. No? Therefore, there was a temptation, or there was this effort to go back to childhood, to very distant memories. No? When we were into the first days, only the second or the third week, we were into the lockdown, where you try to go back to what had happened only 1 week before. It seemed so far away in time, no? So this is weird, no? And then after the lockdown, when we went back to normal, even the lockdown days, it seemed so also to have gone very far in time and very fast, no? I mean, there is a kind of problem of perspective or something, no? That it's just very interesting to pay attention to how memory works. No, it's so fanciful. No, it's so strange. No, it reminds me of people who had lived through wars. No, immediately the things before the war. No, the time before the war becomes so remote. No, and it's in time is. You know that physicists, when you talk to them about time, they smile. No, they smile at you somewhat condescendingly, because for physics, no, for time is a very flimsy concept. No, they don't pay that much attention to time. No, so time is mostly a perception. No, it's our perception of time. No? I would like to share it with you one of the most beautiful memories. No. You know that being a writer, a freelance writer, I mean, you own all your time. No? So this is good in a sense, but this is quite bad in another sense, because your job never ends. There is no time out. There is no ending. There is no vacation. No, so. I remember I lived in New York. I live on 106 near Hudson River, no? 106 in Western Avenue. And I used to ride my bike all the way down along the river to NYU and back. Sometimes when spring was already spring, and after one day with office hours in the morning and teaching in the afternoon, and then I was tired and took my bike and started to ride back home along the river, no? With the sun going down over Jersey. No? And after this full day of work, of reading at the library, of taking notes, of talking to students and reading papers, I was tired. And when you are tired, you are justified. No? And I was tired, but at the same time, I was enjoying so much, no, my ride back home along the river. And sometimes I was saying to myself, I'll try never to forget how happy I am at this moment. No, going back, that's simple. No, with my backpack and my books and my laptop, you know, the backpack, and the very long shadows, and riding back home late in the early evening, you know, with this golden New York sun. That was happiness.